Well, welcome everybody to the March edition of the SLA CIC webinar. I'm Liz Frickleton with Aurora WDC, and we have been a longtime sponsor of the SLA CIC and broader organization. So we're just thankful that you've taken time out of your day to be a part of this fantastic community, and welcome, especially welcome to you if you're new. Glad that you've prioritized the idea of learning something new, maybe on your lunch hour. So pull up your chair, grab a notepad and your lunch, and we've got a really awesome crew for you today. I'm particularly excited about Alysse, Zena, and Phil coming together on a topic where we get really, really practical about CI and actually what does it look like to do our jobs so that we don't get fired. Before we get to the discussion, and it will be a lively one, I promise you, I wanted to cover a few housekeeping items as usual. So we have a couple things that we want to make sure that you have on your radar. One is that our crown jewel event is our annual conference. I know we've been very eager to come back together, or at least I have been. So throughout this 2.5 years of madness, we are slated to come to Charlotte, North Carolina, starting on July 31st for our annual conference. The theme is Source Forward, and they've put together an agenda that will be offer both in-person and virtual components. So when you go to the website and check it out, you'll see that the pricing structure is set up to reflect that as well. But I am super excited about that event coming up. So just launched this week, we opened registration. So very important to take advantage of those early bird rates if you're interested in going or attending virtually. And then the other thing that we're always keen on is, continuing our development as CI professionals. And we're really blessed to have one of the fellows, Cynthia Chen Correa, lead the Intel program through our certificate program. And this month, well, I should say April 2022, they're kicking off a course on all about bias. Now, this is something that we all deal with, cognitive biases. So she's going to get really in depth on how do we start to identify and eliminate, or at least reduce bias in our research analysis and decision making. So check that out as well if you're interested. What is coming in April? We've put together a program with the CI Fellows. I don't know that there's been a webinar for a while, so this has been fun to collaborate and get a joint group together. And we've recruited this awesome panel. Some of you hopefully are out there in the audience, so welcome to you. We're so excited to have you next month. And JP Radicek is going to moderate this awesome panel, including Julie Dawson from Yodi over in the UK, Christian Bierser from Commentelli, and our own Eric Johnson from Aurora WDC. So excited to combine the topic of the CI Fellows in Technology We Trust ? Theme with foresight, and think about where intelligence has a role in that. And can we ever get CI to be our crystal ball, our intelligence tool to be a robot with a crystal ball? We'll see. Next up, so we're going to be live tweeting during this webinar. So if you have insights and one-liners and different things that you want to remember from this, make sure you tweet them out. We'll start a thread on the CIC webinar hashtag, and we'll continue the conversation there. And if you are in the audience, as always, you have the opportunity to get lucky and be selected as the winner for $25. That's our giveaway we do every month just for being here. So there is another giveaway coming in this webinar as well. So that's extra special, I guess. With that, I want to, without further ado, you've noticed a new face, and we're very, very privileged to have Cathie Lavallée-Welch. She is our new SLA president, and she's been gracious enough to join us today to say welcome and just to speak to you all. So welcome, Cathie. I'd love to have you come off mute and pass the mic to you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Liz,
Sure.
for inviting me to talk to you all today. I'd like to welcome the SLA competitive intelligence community members, other SLA members, and all the guests to, I think it's a joyous event. I think it's very happy occasion. So the imminent launch of a new publication by SLA, A Practical Guide to Competitive Intelligence by Zena, Phil, Alysse, and all their contributors. I think that's very exciting. I cannot wait to read it. And it may seem new, SLA is doing books, what's going on? Actually, in the past, SLA was involved in publishing and in research. There were several white papers that were being published, for example. So very, very happy, very proud to foray again in publishing as part of our professional development content offerings to our members and to the profession at large. And that project started, to believe, 2018, 2019. SLA then President Al Kirkwood had the idea and the drive to restart that program. And I think he recruited authors. And like I said, for SLA, it's a way to serve and advocate for the profession, to make sure that our CI pros are the best they can be. It puts the spotlight on members. Phil and Zena are both SLA members. And I think it's just a very positive step as we are working to revitalize SLA. A lot of work been going on this year to I was going to say the word in French, I'm sorry, but to really focus SLA on our values and on the pillars of what is the basis of our operations and what we want to achieve. I would like to know, this is the first book of this new series. There is another book in preparation, and it's a book, it's a textbook, almost a textbook on special libraries. And it's authored by Professor Emerita Anita Ontrusek from Valdosta State University in Georgia. So, that's in the works and that's coming. Also very exciting. Liz, I'm very glad you mentioned the registration for the annual conference.
Good.
Yes, because I wanted to mention it. Source Forward, we are coming back in person in Charlotte, North Carolina, but it will be an hybrid conference. So for those of you who cannot travel yet or don't wish to travel just yet, a lot of the programming will be available virtually. As I had a sneak peek at the program, it's going to be fantastic. And did wanted to mention April 19th, we're going to have our next town hall for SLA members. So it's a listening session where the board members are listening to you. We want to know what you're thinking. And the theme is going to be a member experience at SLA. So your registration will be open soon. So congratulations, Zena, Phil, Alysse, as well as your contributors for this wonderful achievement. And like I said, can't wait to read it. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. It was wonderful to have you come on. I just love to get you in front of the audience finally, and it's been something that we've been looking to do. So thank you so much for carving time out of your day and just sharing your perspectives with the group. Let's get to this. So just a quick introduction for our amazing panel that I mentioned. So welcome to Alysse Nockels. She's currently at Elastic, but before that, established competitive intelligence programs at Tanium and McAfee Intel. And she's just an awesome person to bring insight into this, having established her career in CI and is a CI fellow. So I don't know who else better we could bring alongside her friend and colleague, Zena Applebaum. I always think of you, Zena, that pioneer with CI and legal. So she brings a very unique blend as well to her perspective to come, as well as library from the law library side of it. So we're just super excited that we've got 2 Canadians back to back on the line here too, with Cathie and Zena as well. So welcome to Zena. And then last but not least, Phil Britton is at Sedulo Group, so bringing perspectives from both the practitioner and provider side. 20 years experience, some of those other previous roles at Ulta, Best Buy that we know him from, and as well as very, very involved. I've gotten the privilege to work shoulder to shoulder with Phil in the volunteer capacity and leadership capacity here at SLA CI community, where he was just our past chair in 2021. So he's just handed off the baton, but we're so thankful to have you all. Without further ado, I am going to open the floor to you. Thank you so much for being here.
All right. Thank you, Liz. And thanks to SLA for not only helping get this publication out the door, but also for giving us a platform on which to speak about this. So with that, why don't we talk a little bit about the how and why of this book. Zena, Alysse, why'd we compile this book?
Because there wasn't one out there.
Right.
At the end of the day, there's a lot of theory, and there wasn't a lot of practical guidance for how to do competitive intelligence. There's a lot of like 50-foot theory, and we wanted to do something that was a little bit different, that was a little bit more, dare I say, tactile, although I think we might talk about that later.
Yeah, I mean, it needed to be written and considered from a lens of someone who's, feet on the street, someone who's done the work, someone who's lived the crisis, the drama, all of it, and has the perspective of the lesson learned, as opposed to, like Zena said, the theory of it. We wanted that actual hands-on experience doing these things, all the different facets that make a CI professional.
Yeah, and if I can add, since all 3 of us are competitive intelligence fellows whose founding principle is based on the acronym ACME of ambassadors, champions, mentors, and educators, this to me falls firmly in the mentorship category. It's like, hey, there's a landmine, don't step on it. And that's kind of how I feel this came to pass as well. With that, I know you see our 3 smiling faces up here, but it takes a village. And over the next few slides here, we'll talk a little bit about some of our contributors and the people who we asked to tell their stories. And in some cases, as Zena was pointing out earlier, some of these stories are painful learning experience stories. They're not necessarily all happy, but you'll see a mix of folks in here. And Zena, you have a strong point of view on the mix of individuals we have who contributed to this.
Yeah, when we started to put our contributor list together and started to reach out to people, some of it was around people that we had seen speak, or we had heard speak, or we just knew from the industry. But then I also really wanted to make sure that we got a good cross section of geographies represented, because the way you do things in different countries is different. I wanted to make sure we got a good cross section of industries, and Alysse and I talk about this all the time, kind of having been pit against one another years ago as like the conservative, legal, do everything by the book versus tech moves really fast, therefore I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get things done kind of positions. I wanted to make sure that we had a good cross-section of industries. And then I'm also always really sensitive to the male-female breakdown. We are 50% or more of the real world. And so I wanted to make sure that our book reflected that as well. And so, yeah, for me, it was really like, let's get a good cross-section of people who are out there doing it. And then let's make sure that they reflect the faces and voices of the people that are actually doing this kind of work, because we're not a homogenous group by any means.
And we wanted folks that were willing to say the truth and not try to hide it or obfuscate it with fancy words. Let's just be straight up. And that's the kind of folks that we tap for this book, this collaboration. Yeah,
plus, not the least of which, these are people who owed us favors and we could potentially blackmail. So it was easy to twist some arms to get them to volunteer as well. So, with that, we had some questions prepared, but just to just to let everybody know, this is a free forum. So feel free to jump in with questions, and we're happy to answer questions of attendees on the what and why and how this is different. But first off, first question, yeah, this book came to us over drinks. Who wants to tell the story?
Oh boy. I vividly remember it. Like, come on, go ahead, Zena.
So we were in Chicago. I believe Alysse was receiving her tiara as a CI fellow.
Yep.
Phil was living in Chicago at the time and came out to congratulate her, and I was just a fellow. And we were sitting around talking about, well, we went to a bar after the after party.
Waiting for a flight. I think that would be mine. And we were like, why doesn't this exist? And then I think, like, literally that, that trite thing that people always say, like, on the back of a napkin, but I actually think we literally took out a napkin and started writing.
And I always said that the best ideas come when you've got a little bit of alcohol or a lot of alcohol running through your system. You end up taking some of the blinders off, some of the just more of the thinking more like a business person as opposed to like what really needs to get done. So you take the blinders off, you think critically about what really needs to get done. And that's how this all came out. We were frustrated with the lack of tools available for new and experienced practitioners. The stories that we all lived in and had to, put up with for years were never really communicated out, in small pieces here and there at Skip or SLA sessions, but never at a broad scale. And we thought that there's so many good stories and so much good lessons learned from the community of CI practitioners that needed to be told. And that's really what the genesis of this was. We got drunk. I probably was the drunkest because I had no flight and I had nothing to worry about. And I just got my tiara. But this is, I think this is where a lot of good ideas come from. It's just bar conversation with colleagues that all have a similar topic or similar issue that they want to address.
Yeah, and one of the things we talked about was there's so many books out there, but so many of them also focus on competitive intelligence frameworks or theory. And precious few of them, in our opinion, came down to the how do you actually do this? How do you actually take this template and make it your job? How do you do this in such a way that you continue to have a job, and that you can be effective in what you do, regardless of what how you're doing your Porter's 5 forces or your 4 corners analysis or any, we can name them all, which are great, but this was the application of those somewhat theoretical or academic books, which we felt needed to bridge the gap.
Well, so it's great that you mentioned that, Phil. How many times when you were at Best Buy or Alysse at Elastic Now, does anyone ever say to you, hey, can you go do a Porter's 5 forces analysis on this particular issue for me?
Nope.
And just the fact that you guys are shaking your heads, but like, how often is that the way that these things transpire? And so there's this obvious mismatch between the way we're taught to do CI and what we actually produce. So I think that's one of those things where it's like, I know how to do a 5 forces analysis. I'm happy to do one for the legal industry or anywhere else. But how relevant and helpful is that in my day-to-day work?
Yeah, and especially if you're in a high moving industry like high tech, there's no time for that. Are you kidding? Like we can't barely look out 3 months in our, the future of the company and where we're going. And it's so focused on tactical. How do I compete today? How do I keep my company's doors open and actually even be able to execute any kind of strategy? And so it's that lack of tactical focus, I think, is another piece that we were, in our drunken stupor talking about at the bar, is that we need to really talk about how some industries really have to focus on tactical. And there's really nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of books and publications and sessions that you'll go to, in your CI careers that will really almost force feed you that you have to do strategy. If you're not doing strategy, you're not doing your job, you're not valued, quit your job, move on. And that's not the right message, because there's a lot of value you can bring on a tactical day-to-day, just helping the company stay afloat, helping it stay competitive and winning competitive deals.
So
thinking real quick at the next question, because I feel like we're jumping slightly.
Before we get into Justin Soul's question, there was a question in the actual Q&A rather than chat from Christine, and she asked how the book compares to Millennium Intelligence by Jerry Miller that was published about 10 years ago. So first of all, it's not one author, it's not one voice. So I think that's like one of the differentiators of this book. As a result of it being different voices, you're getting really different perspectives. You're also getting lived experiences. So every single chapter is written by somebody who's lived it, who's done it. We've all done really different things. Each chapter talks about something really different. And if we pulled up that list again, we could talk about what each of those authors is actually writing about and the things that they're writing about. And so that's one of the ways in which it differs. And it's not specifically looking at one application. You know, Millennial Intelligence talks a lot about digital and how you use the internet and other digital tools to do competitive intelligence. We touch on that. And in fact, Rahul, who was on the next slide or the previous slide, Dingrati, he touches on whether or not you even need to buy a system to do competitive intelligence. So that all is incorporated in our book, but it's really different.
Absolutely. And we kind of divided the book into sort of three big chunks, which was sort of like, how did we all get here? It's a running joke in competitive intelligence that we've all fallen into this profession. Like very few of us, you know, when we were freshmen in high school said, man, I'm going to be a CI professional when I grow up. Just doesn't happen. So there was that. The fact that a lot of us, and Zena, one of my favorite chapters is yours about being somebody who isn't a lawyer, even though you're in the legal profession, you know, and so many of us have that experience. You know, we aren't, you know, Alysse isn't a programmer or a coder, but she needs to know about this industry to be effective in her job.
Are you saying you didn't shop at Ulta very often, Phil?
I'm not a beauty enthusiast, believe it or not. So this just happens naturally. It's amazing. And then also, like you had said, Zena, that just, gee, how do you actually do your job? You know, you don't wake up and tell your CEO, I'm going to do a Porter's 5 Forces on this. No, I'm going to help you make a decision, you know, one way or the other. And then lastly, just the importance of that storytelling, which is how to take that theory and make it practice, put it into practice and make it very useful to those around you. And those are sort of the big three buckets that I think we came up with.
And Suki Fuller's chapter really focuses on that whole idea around storytelling and competitive intelligence as well.
Absolutely. So that's kind of what makes this book a little different and why we had the hubris to think, yes, the world needed one more competitive intelligence book out of all of the thousands that have been published. So the title of this webinar was How to Do Your Job and Not Get Fired. Is that what we intended?
Essentially, yeah. I mean, really, if you are following some of the other publications out there and doing the 5 forces, even though nobody cares, and you're doing all these exercises that you're told you're supposed to do, but nobody in your company cares about it, yeah, you're probably going to get your butt not maybe fired, but laid off because you're not performing at what they need you to do. And this is really getting into the people who live this. You know, they know how to run a CI function or be a CI practitioner within various industries. And they know what those companies need. And it's all about being a supporting mechanism within your company and what they actually need you to do. So if that's tactical, if that's strategic, if that's, you know, literally writing battle cards all day, or if that's writing, you know, an entire scenario analysis, whatever that is, you have to basically go and do what they need you to do. And if you're following a textbook that was written at a higher level for the masses, then you probably are going to get laid off.
I feel the need to put out a disclaimer. There is see, this is me doing that whole like conservative thing.
Legal thing.
Porter's 5 Forces is awesome. All of Porter's theories, analysis without paralysis, like all of the frameworks that exist for a reason and exist to make us better at the jobs that we do. I think our book and the intention behind it is really to suggest that you need to be able to move beyond those things and use those things in a way that makes sense for the context that you're living. So to, you know, Justin Soul's question, if I go back there, it was about, you know, needing to have all the different theories and frameworks because CI is both nobody's job and everybody's job. And I think that that's true. When you are the CI practitioner, whether you're a single practitioner or you're part of a team, you're sort of, or whether it's, you know, just half of your job or a part of your job, you're sort of in trust. There's a sense of trust that you know what you're doing. And you do need that theory to understand what you're doing and what you're trying to get at. So I know we've been ripping on Porter's 5 Forces, and I think I started it, but the idea is simply that you need to know that stuff exists, but you also need to know how to move beyond it and put the work that you're doing in the context of the people who need to make decisions so that you don't get fired.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh no, I used Porter's as recently as yesterday, like the 5 Forces and the 4 Corners, like as recently as yesterday, in putting something together. I just didn't call them those things, and it was, and I think I mentioned to you guys earlier. It's a 50th anniversary. I'm going to shift gears here. A 50th anniversary of the greatest movie about business ever made, The Godfather. And if you, without thinking too hard, like the Porter's 5 Forces are evident in The Godfather. And that novel was published by Mario Puzo 5 years before Michael Porter put the 5 Forces together. So these things are truths. They exist and they're useful, whether you call them that or not. And I think that's kind of our point as well, is how do you adapt that and make it real to the people, or make it, you know, an Academy Award-winning movie for that matter. You know, it can be done. We just got a real quick question. We talked about people who get fired. There's kind of two facets to that. One is there's almost always that perennial discussion of what is the ROI of competitive intelligence? Like, are you demonstrating value? And I think our consensus is, if you are influencing decisions and helping your company move through business, then ROI becomes a non-starter.
Mhm.
And then I think the second aspect that has come up and is a chapter in the book was about a competitive intelligence misfire, about signals that were missed around a competitor radically altering a business model, and how it was a speed bump to the contributor who put that chapter together. So, you know, Alysse, any thoughts on either of those 2 points, either the ROI point or missing signals?
I think we just all have to realize that CI is a cost center. We're not a profit center, unless you can tie it to revenue, which is a great way to show ROI, is if you can tie your value to actual deals won. That's one method, one, you know, easy, quick and dirty method to do it. But in general, we're a cost center. We companies spend money on us. So when times are tough, when the industry is moving at a faster pace than your organization is, and you're getting outwitted by your competition, yeah, sometimes they look for cost centers to cut because they need to make Wall Street happy. If you're publicly traded, you're always trying to appease Wall Street. And so that's why the value is so important. And that's why, going back to what I said earlier, is, and what we've all been saying, is that you got to really focus on doing the activities that your company needs to show that value, and not focusing on things that someone else told you should do. Really, really look at what your organization needs from you, and tailor your team and yourself to accommodate what they need to make those decisions, to move forward and to increase competitiveness.
And that doesn't always necessarily look like textbook competitive intelligence either. Sometimes we're being asked to look for a needle in a haystack, and you're like, yeah, this is not my job. You're right, it's not your job, but sometimes you just got to do what your bosses are asking you to do, or the organization needs you to do, within reason, obviously. And within ethical guidelines also. But, you know, like, I would say I spent a good part of my early career in competitive intelligence not doing things that were purely competitive intelligence. They were maybe more researchy, they were maybe more human intelligence that didn't end up in a rigorous analysis framework. It was a lot of networking and relationship building. So that I could become that trusted advisor that was then given the bigger, more strategic things to work on. So just recognize that sometimes you're not going to be doing proper CI, but you know what? The marketing people are not doing proper marketing either all the time. And the research people aren't doing proper research all the time either. We just do the things we need to do to move the organization forward, with the hope that at some point the 80-20 rule becomes the rule of thumb.
Yeah, and a great example of that is when I was building a CI program at Secure Computing. We got acquired by McAfee, and it got weird. Whenever you're acquired, things get weird. And it's a way we kept the team alive and kept us all employed, was we took on this thing called sales advocacy, not competitive intelligence. It's literally just salespeople having questions in the field, needing to get immediate responses, whether that's how do I respond to an RFP? What's our pricing? You know, just random sales requests. We tacked that on top of the CI piece because that was what McAfee valued from us. They saw value in that, kept the team intact. Whereas we were watching a lot of our colleagues in different departments getting laid off, being shown, you know, unemployment slips. So that's a great example of how we had to kind of twist and manipulate our team a little bit, add on something that none of us wanted to do. But it kept the team together. And then eventually we were able to shed that piece off, went to a different function, and we were able to focus completely on competitive.
And ultimately, though, the stuff that would...
That's a great segue to the next question. So sorry to cut you off, Zena, but
okay.
that ties right into this one now. Zena, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I was just going to say, like, sometimes through doing those activities, not only do you build better bridges with your sales team, who are essentially in the field, who are basically your like human intelligence, like fountains, but also you learn things about your competitors when you're answering questions like that. You learn things about the way your organization works, or what your customers value when you start to do some of those other projects that are outside of your purview. And if you're smart about the way you collect that data and systematic about the way you collect that data, you can use it for other purposes. So it's not always loss, and it's not always un-CI-like, it's just maybe not traditional CI.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've always viewed sort of that tactical piece as tactical pieces are the individual Lego blocks that help build your strategy. You know, there's got to be all those little pieces in there. And I remember a time in a previous life where we had a competitor that was growing, and we had to have two very different messages. The tactical one was, here's how you sell against this competitor when they open up in your city. This is what they're going to say. This is what they do. And the strategic message was to our CEO saying, these guys are burning cash at an unsustainable rate. And if they still exist in March, I'll be shocked. So CEO, don't lose any sleep about them, over them at all. They're gone. And to the stores, hey, here's what you got to do, because even the time horizons, the CEO should be thinking a year out, 2 years out, 5 years out, and the individual stores are thinking about that customer standing in front of them at that moment. So it was a very different message.
Yeah, and honestly, if you can't achieve, or you can't tackle the tactical question and help your business continue to thrive or even exist within your current industry, then what's the point of having a 5-year strategy? If you can't do today's work, then your strategy may not even exist, especially in high moving markets.
All right. Do we want to talk a little bit about how the book is pulled together? Did we come up with the broad categories together, or did we wing it?
I think it kind of fell. I don't think we actually intended it. We talked to the authors. They came up with some great ideas, and then it kind of formulated into 3 really nice, natural components, or I guess sections of the book. But we certainly didn't do that on purpose, I don't believe.
No, I know we were aiming for, I'm like thinking back to the night in the bar. I know we wanted to get a good cross section of topics, and we wanted actually authors who would have a good voice about them, and share, real things that happened. And then I think it just kind of naturally fell. We were like, okay, what's the flow here? And when we started to look at it, it just kind of worked.
Yeah, no, I would agree. It was they kind of went hand in hand, and it kind of ties to the next question, which is how did we select the contributors? And it was, these are people by and large, I think we knew all of these people going into it. If not all 3 of us, at least 1 or 2 of us knew everybody, so we could ask them on a personal level, would you like to contribute? We had also heard almost all of these individuals. We've heard their point of view in the past. It wasn't just that we saw them present something, or they were on a webinar, they were talking head like we are right now. It was we knew they had a point of view, and that was important as well. We went out of our way to find folks who had a point of view and weren't going to be wishy-washy about it. And in some cases, the POVs conflict from chapter to chapter. So you'll hear one person say, "Oh, we absolutely need to do this, otherwise you're an idiot," and somebody else go, "Don't be an idiot, don't do that." It was that was done intentionally. We wanted that tension.
Can I go off script and ask you 2 a question?
Sure.
How important is it in your CI career to have a point of view?
It's kind of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Like people joke about the elevator speech, And I can't tell you the number of times that I've bumped into a leader back when I was in a corporate environment. I've bumped into a leader and they've said, what do you know about this? Or what do you think about X? You know, which is always great as a CI provider to be, hey, they want my input. But I better have an answer. I can't say, let me get back to you on that. You may not be face to face with that executive again for a while. So always have a point of view.
Yeah, and I think that companies that have strong CI functions or strong CI practitioners look to that person or team to provide the outside view. That's the value we all provide in, is coming in, is looking at it from a little slightly different tweaked lens. We're not all drinking the Kool-Aid. We're not all believing strategy. We're looking at it from what the customers, the market, the analyst thinks of us. And that point of view is so critical across many, I mean, really every facet of the organization, whether it be HR, legal, R&D, marketing, doesn't matter. Everyone needs that outside view, and kind of the jerk in the back of the room that calls BS on things when, you know, if someone's presenting some strategy and you're like, yeah, sorry, 10 other competitors have already done that. That's the kind of point of view we all need to provide to all of the people within our organizations.
Hey, an argument's still communication, right?
Right.
Just be polite.
Some of us just
about
enjoy
it.
arguments more than just regular conversation. I won't name names.
And just be polite about it. We had a question come in here about CI in the legal industry. And before I jump in, I'd love to get both Alysse and Phil's thoughts on it. It seems like CI in legal is a bit of a misnomer. More often than not, what we're doing is business intelligence. How do you get leadership to understand the capabilities and engage with you versus hiring consultants? I'm going to throw that to you, Phil, as a consultant. And I know, Alysse, in your former life, you were a consultant. This is where the job threat gets real. And so how do you avoid that?
Yeah, there's two thoughts there. One, let me address the CI as more like business intelligence first. And you can view business intelligence in multiple different ways. One, just your industry, your market intelligence, or a lot of companies view BI as the analytics behind their customer metrics, et cetera. And my point of view there is competitive intelligence, market intelligence, business intelligence. They're three legs of the same stool. What are our customers doing? What are their other options, which is the CI component? And then, you know, how much, what were their, what drove them to purchase, which is the market intelligence. That's kind of my take on that. So they go hand in hand. Now, when it comes to the consultant standpoint, that's a double-edged sword because before I became a consultant, I rarely used them. I tried to do everything myself, and you're limited a bit in what you can do. There's certain phone calls and questions that consultants can make when it comes to like primary intelligence. They can make a phone call that you probably can't. So if you can get yourself into the role of managing some of those outside consultants. Now, when I say consultant, I'm talking about some of the CI firms, sponsors of this webinar, the people you'll see at Skip. I'm not talking about the McKinseys, the EY of the world. That is a completely different kettle of fish. But if, again, you can manage relationships when it looks at the outside market and know who does what well and still have a point of view expressed, you'll probably do okay and you're less likely to be outsourced. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it goes back to providing value and ROI. If you can provide that value internally, yes, you can use outsiders to help, to extend your capability. There's some things that you just can't do very well. You need that outsider view to further amplify the outside image of your organization. And there are, as long as you're providing value with what you're doing and what you're contributing, and then using the outsider's influence or information and pulling it in to your, your intelligence practice. Yeah, there's no reason that you can't have a happy coexistence. But I'm like Phil, like in my early days, I was like, no consultants. I don't want any of it. I want to keep it all in-house. And as you kind of evolve in your career, you realize, you know what? Some of those groups do a really, really good job, much better than I or my team can do. And that's when you have to leverage their help.
And to answer the question specifically about the legal industry in that space and getting management buy-in, I mean, one of the things that's unique about the legal industry is that you don't have the one bottom line. You don't have the one set of executives where they're driving the bus. You tend to have a management team comprised of a managing partner and maybe a chief operating officer and things like that. But then you also have each of your practice group heads, and in a way it's akin to your different product lines or akin to different products within the organization, but not really, because they're all the models tend to be more, they get funded by what they individually bring in. So what I would say in that case is make two people your friend. Make the chief operating officer your friend and focus some of your CI efforts in a law firm around the operational aspects of the firm. And there you can really dig into what we would call traditional competitive intelligence. So you're looking at who's still doing disbursements, who's not doing disbursements, location closures, location opening, things like that. Things that can really help drive the bottom line of law firms, which they don't often talk about. In terms of top line revenue, I would start to do things like become really close friends with one or two practice heads and find out what those practices are struggling with and keep your CI activities focused on those one or two practices and then scale from there once you can actually really contribute in a meaningful way there. And I'm happy to talk offline if you ever want to talk more specifically about particular challenges with specific practices and how you can start to build your credibility within those.
That's actually a great segue. And you used a word there, Zena, I want to go back to, which is product. What do your products look like? And I think that's a great segue into the topics question here. So one of the topics we have covered, Lindy Smart is putting together something on building a hierarchy of deliverables. And she very, very much thinks about the stuff her team produces as a product, which product is selling, which one isn't. And some of these products are tactical products. Some of these are very strategic products. And that to me was a great topic in here is really getting down to the what do you do with your job. And then we talked a little bit about sort of the three basic categories, like how to fall into competitive intelligence, how to actually do your job, and the importance of storytelling. Are there any topics, Zena, you and Alysse are really tied into here that without naming names and picking a favorite, because none of us want to pick a favorite child, how do you feel about some of the things that we've got?
Honestly, I love all the topics, and I know that sounds trite. And of course, I got to read them all as they came in and send some edits along and things like that. To me, it really shows the depth and breadth and the one size doesn't fit all for competitive intelligence, going back to Justin's comment earlier. A couple of things that I think are worth calling out that I don't think you'll find anywhere else. The chapter around failing in CI or around missing signals, how as good as we are at our jobs, sometimes we're not good enough, and what we say to people falls on deaf ears, either because we're not communicating well or because they don't want to hear it. And you can't change the mind of somebody who doesn't want to hear what you have to tell them. So I think that's a really interesting chapter. There's some interesting lines in Lynn Strand's chapter that really resonated with me about being a bullshit detector, about being the people who have to be able to say, yeah, that's not real news, or like, where are you getting that from? Again, without naming names, I had a recent experience where a competitor is promoting something and we can't validate it anywhere. So we're like, how real is that? So that's I think for me, that was another really good chapter that I really enjoyed. But they were all really good, to be honest. And I do like Lindy's hierarchy too.
I can't agree more. It's such a great variety. There's so much for certain chapters are going to resonate more for others than they will for you maybe, that it depends on where you are in your career, what pieces are you struggling with, what pieces really resonate with you. It's just like any book, but I think because there's so many different viewpoints that are brought here, it's not one person's view, it's a whole, like you saw all the authors, there's some very well-respected folks in the industry that have written from a very personal point of view. There's definitely one about, we talk about like the different, like whether you want to be a consultant or whether you want to be a CI practitioner, and the goods and the bads that go with it from a very, very honest perspective from people that have actually done it. And then there's just the whole middle section is, like as Phil said, is just doing your job. That's probably my favorite, because I'm very practical. I like the hands-on, let's just go get it done kind of piece of it. And I think everyone can find something within just that section alone that can help them immediately in their job. From like the next day after reading the book, you can apply these things because they're written from that sense of, I've done this before, we've done this before, this is what worked, this is what didn't. And it's super, super honest. So yeah, I don't have a particular chapter, unfortunately. I can't pick one.
Yeah, no, I liked your discussion, your mention of the career pathing as well, because I remember it was my job. I don't know, or probably early 2000s when I realized, A, what I was doing was competitive intelligence, and B, it was an actual job. Like there's a there. I got involved with the professional organizations like SLA, got involved with Skip, and realized, oh, this could be huge. This opened up my mind as to what I could be doing. So from a personal level, that was huge for me and has helped me sort of plan out a career that up until that point I'd probably been stumbling through, just kind of falling from role to role. And then it was like, no, I can direct this, and that was awesome. And if we can help one person figure out that, hey, there could be direction here, and this is what you could do, then hey, yay, it was worth it.
There's a question that's actually a great segue to that, which is, out of curiosity, are there any topics in CI that you wish were covered or covered in a bit more detail? And I do think we missed the mark in providing a chapter on how do you start a career in CI. None of us planned it, but we all ended up here. But there are people, I'm hoping, listening to this webinar, or maybe, have heard about CI and want to get into CI. So I don't think we really touched on how you get into it actively as opposed to just falling into it. And that's something that I would be, I think we missed the boat on, and I would love to put into our sequel when we have a sequel. And Lindy Smart, I may be looking at you to write that chapter.
No, I think that's great. And in fact, somebody, Craig Fleischer, just said consulting versus practitioner, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Some of us are cut out differently for different things. Like Alysse, I know the consultant thing maybe conflicted a bit with your personality, shall we say?
A smidge, just a skosh, yeah.
So,
yeah, and we broke that down actually in a fun chapter where basically doing personality profiling and strength finders and saying, okay, what are your natural, Myers-Briggs, going right back down to like that kind of level, and what, if everyone's done the Gallup's strength finders, mapping that to the right role, because it may sound fun and interesting on the other side of things, but you really should know who you are first before you try to embark on a career change.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely the case, and I think that discussion of how you're wired was huge. So I enjoyed that a lot. All right, so let's see. We just have another question. The experts are always from out of town. Why do you feel like that it has to be that what I used to call back in my Best Buy days, that the guy from out of town with a briefcase and a tie? Who are they? They automatically seem smarter. And trust me, being a consultant, I've discovered that no, we're not automatically smarter. In fact, it's often very, very difficult to be smarter about somebody's business than they are. You're not going to get embedded with a company to the degree where you can be an expert on every aspect of their business in 6 or 8 weeks. It's just not going to happen.
I think often hiring consultants, when it's not you hiring a consultant to help you, but where it's management bringing in a consultant to answer a question that you feel like you could have answered as the CI practitioner, or at least taken on the opportunity. I think it's a communication problem more than it is a consultant problem. In other words, I think management doesn't want to take people out of their day-to-day work to answer the question, because they still need that day-to-day work being done. And they just forget to tell anyone, or they don't, and maybe have rose-colored glasses on, but I feel like it's not intended to be personal, as this person said, this anonymous attendee here said in their question, that it's not personal. I don't think it is personal. I think we get our backs up and we're like, I could answer that question. Why are they paying somebody like, trillions of dollars to come in and do that assessment? I could have done it for them. But I think at the end of the day, you're doing a really good job doing what you're doing, and they don't want to pull you away from that. So they bring in somebody else. They just don't necessarily present it the best way. And the more professional the organization, or the smaller the organization, I find the less that they think about those emotional intelligence questions of bringing in consultants. So I agree, it's not personal. And the consultants are often have the freedom to do things that you can't do as an employee.
Yeah,
half the time they come in and they steal your own content. I did that. That happened to me in a previous life where the big consultant companies, and again, not the, the CI ones, but the big guys on the East Coast came in and would use all of our competitive information that we had because they got access to our CI portal and repurposed it, but just put their logo on it. So it doesn't mean that the data was bad. It just was that it needed to come from a different audience. Yeah. And sometimes there is this value that comes in from if someone else says it, yes, you wear your company badge, you're supposed to represent the outside world. But just sometimes there is that need, if you're going to make a change in the company, they have to have it said by someone with a different logo on their business card. It happens all the time. Again, don't take it personally. It's just sometimes the only way the company will actually make a change.
Right. So real quick, there's a question here from Hal, and Hal, thank you for also helping poke us along and get this project off the ground. So thank you there. But you asked about how can this book be used to teach MBAs about CI, and I think almost the entirety of the book is that practical application. That's why the word practical appears in the title. This is what you learned when you got your MBA. This is how you learned about business. This is how to apply your MBA, in my opinion. Speaking as somebody who can't even spell MBA, doesn't have one, I feel like this is the practical advice on how to apply what you learned in business school, what you've learned in business in general. This is how you get traction with it. That's my
think of it as the internship of your MBA program.
And I also commented separately to Hal in the chat that the chapter on, well, there's a couple of different chapters, but the chapter on missing signals that I mentioned earlier is a great case study on why CI can work for you and why CI doesn't always work for you. And it's a great opportunity for MBA students to dig into some of those examples and to pick them apart and figure out what happened. Names aren't really named, but you can figure out the examples. The other thing I would say is like around career pathing. There's a couple of chapters in there around career pathing that I think MBAs would be really interested in terms of where they can go and what they can do and how they can use their skills in different ways.
Yep. So I see that Liz has advanced the question, probably as a way to poke us along here. Availability. So this book, we received an email this morning, literally just a couple hours ago, about final edits, and then we can turn it over for publication. So, I mean, I'd like to say that this thing should be available in the next 30 days across both hardcover, multiple formats such as Kindle, etc. So I'm really hoping that that can happen. And as you see the list of individuals on the screen here, there is one person who was left off the list, and unfortunately it was in version control issues. Hal Kirkwood, one of the people who asked questions, was one of the people who was, shall we say, gently prodding Zena to say, okay, great, how do you get this thing off a napkin and into our hands? So he was the persistent question asker who prompted us to finally get rolling on this. And then the names you see here are some of the folks who have helped us get this through editing, through design of our cover, through who's going to publish it, the legal copyright, the contracting aspects of it, the releases and all that other stuff. So great shout out to those folks.
I hear it makes a great Christmas gift.
Or Hanukkah, if that's the way you swing. So another book planned. I think we've touched on the idea that there could definitely be more chapters. There could definitely be a version 2, second edition. There could be another book. I don't know. What do you guys think?
It's funny.
There's so much to cover. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say when we gave it out to a bunch of people for pre-reads, they all came back with like, "This is amazing," or like, "This is amazing," and here's another topic you should cover. So I think there's appetite for it. Let's see how this one goes, and I'm in if you guys are.
Yeah.
Right. Soon to be a major motion picture as well, from what I understand. All right. So Liz, thank you for moving us along and keeping us on time. Last questions, anyone? Or comments from my co-conspirators?
No, I think I want to say that Zena and Phil are fantastic to work with. The whole SLA crew was so much fun. I speak for the whole panel. We've never done a book before, so it made it super easy, super fun. I think all of the contributors have wrote such amazing chapters, and I can't wait for y'all to read it. I think it's just a great work. I hope I speak for Phil and Zena, but I think we are very proud of what we accomplished here and what everyone wrote, and want you to all go get it.
All while everybody was still doing their day jobs too. So thank you for that, all of you, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just happy that I can give a copy to my father so he knows what I really do is not corporate espionage, but that's another.
Awesome.
That's great. I love it. Thank you all for your awesome discussion, and thank you everybody for participating. I love that you recruited truth tellers, and that there's so many voices here that are represented. And I think Zavo put a comment in the chat that said he intends to devour this book. I loved that, Zavo, and just totally agree on that. So as we close out today, let me just go back to our quick promo for what we're looking at next month. Oh, and the book giveaway, we're not kidding about that. We're going to select somebody at random. We were just talking about that before. So you select a name at random and we'll let you know if that's you. There's possibility for signage, like authors to sign it. Potentially there's something going on next month in Minneapolis that some people might be at. So some of us are getting together at least next month for an industry gathering. And so that could be an extra bonus if you get a signed copy too. With that, Where's My Robot with a Crystal Ball is next up for April 20th. So we're coming back at the same channel, same location on Wednesday, April 20th, 12 Eastern, with Julie, Eric, Christian, and JP leading that discussion. And we hope that if you're a CI fellow on the call in the audience today, please share, spread the word in that circle. If you're an SLA community member, please share it on your channels, and then anybody's welcome. We're just interested to get this discussion going next month. So I think with that, we will close. Catherine, thank you again for being here. Feel free to come on if you'd like, but just an honor again to have you take time out of your day. So I think with that, panelists, anything else from your side before we close out?
Thanks for the enthusiasm. Appreciate everyone's interest in the book, and looking forward to hearing your feedback when you read it.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks to our audience members. We will see you next month. Thanks, everybody.